Hello fellow mutants, welcome back to another video. And as you guys may know, I'm a huge Ashoka fan. I've been an Ashoka fan since her debut in the Clone Wars movie in 2008. That was my first Star Wars movie. I was a fan of hers even before she had a big fan base, because at first she was met with some sort of backlash, and over time people started to love her, to like her. And Ashoka, even though it's like she left the Jedi Order in season 5, she is still one of my favorite Clone Wars heroes. She's one of my favorite Clone Wars heroes. And I don't refer to Ahsoka as a Jedi because in like Rebels, she did say, "Yeah, I'm not a Jedi anymore," or she makes a reference to that she's not a Jedi anymore, to Ezra and Kanan. So in respect to that character, I don't really refer to Ahsoka as a Jedi. Even though she has some Jedi values, she's not like a Jedi. Officially. Anyways, I'm going to read this article that says, from Screen Rant, that says, why Dave Filoni keeps bring Ahsoka back to Star Wars. Is that too much? Let's read, shall we? More than a decade after her debut in Star Wars The Clone Wars, directed by Dave Filoni, Ahsoka, keeps returning to the Star Wars franchise. And I lost my place. Ahsoka keeps returning to Star Wars. There we go. From a canon-breaking character in what many deemed as a kids movie. From a canon-breaking character in what deemed as a kids movie to an audience-favorite Jedi whose Star Wars legacy continues to be built. Ahsoka has had one of the most interesting character progressions in the Star Wars franchise. An argument can be made that Ahsoka has already become as important to Star Wars as original movie characters such as Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. Yet some of her Star Wars appearances were more surprising than expected. There are not many characters who have lived through the Star Wars prequel timeline and the original trilogy timeline, and the post-Return of the Jedi timeline. Ahsoka has been involved in major events in all three main parts of the Star Wars canon. Plus, there is no confirmation on whether Ahsoka is alive during the events of the Star Wars sequels, meaning that it's entirely possible for Ahsoka to keep returning in future projects. I think, with The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, I'll give them that. But I think with The Rise of Skywalker, they kind of confirmed, at least by the time Rise of Skywalker takes place in this Skywalker saga in this, or the Star Wars timeline, that she is dead. Because she's one of the voices that Rey hears as she's calling to all the Jedi from the past. So I think Ahsoka is dead, at least by the time of Rise of Skywalker. But in terms of like The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, I'll give them that. She might still be alive. Who knows? But I hope she's not around in the sequel trilogy timeline. Because even though she's like my favorite Clone Wars character, or Clone Wars hero, I think every character like has their time to like go out. I didn't exactly mind Luke Skywalker going out in The Last Jedi. It's just how they did it irked me. I think Ahsoka should have like met her like maker pretty much in season 2 of Rebels. I think if she died to Vader in the season 2 finale of Rebels, that could have been like whoa, like heart dropping, and it was heart dropping when season 2 came around, but then that emotional weight was taken in season 4, to be honest. But if she stayed dead, that could have like been like an emotional like whoa, you know, and it could have like been like a source of more conflict in Vader's life, you know, and who knows, maybe Vader believed that Ahsoka has died after their duel. I think it's like Morban. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. And so it could still work as like a character arc for Vader to like having trouble resisting letting Anakin back out. But I feel like it would have been more like empowering if they kept Ahsoka dead. That's just me. But then we would have seen like Ahsoka and Luke Skywalker interacting, which I admittedly like nerded out a little bit when we saw Luke Skywalker and Ahsoka meeting, like talking to each other in Book of Boba. Because Luke Skywalker's my favorite Jedi, Ahsoka's my favorite Clone Wars hero. It was cool seeing those two on screen, but I still think that Ahsoka should have died in the duel with Vader. That said, let's continue. Sorry, that was like I went on this like little tangent. I do apologize. While seeing such an iconic Star Wars character appearing in new shows is always exciting, Dave Filoni has brought Ahsoka back several times now, even when her story was seemingly over. As the character's creator, it makes sense that Filoni would be interested in revisiting her story. However, there are also narrative reasons why Star Wars' apparent refusal to let Ahsoka go actually makes sense. Okay. With the character effectively bridging the gap between different Star Wars eras and connecting otherwise disparate parts of the saga. So every time Filoni brought Ahsoka back, Clone Wars Season 5, Episode 20, The Wrong Jedi, was the first time of three Clone Wars endings at the time of three Clone Wars endings. What the heck? I'm confused on what they exactly mean by that. Anyways, at the time that was expected to be the last Clone Wars episode ever released. Oh right, guys. Lucasfilm, like that's when Lucasfilm got bought out by Disney, and Season 6 was already kind of done, and they released Season 6 on Netflix. I remember that. Anywho, I'm sidetracking. Sorry. At that time, that was expected to be the last Clone Wars episode ever released, and it was the most fitting that it covered Ahsoka's departure from the Jedi Order. Yeah, that was like that. I remember watching that on Cartoon Network. That like my heart was like, whoa, like that hurt me. Even though it makes sense and I totally support Ahsoka on her decision, but damn, that like hurt me seeing like Ahsoka leaving the Jedi Order. Like holy shit. So Dave Filoni did a good job like giving me that emotional baggage with Ahsoka over time and giving me that hurt to see Ahsoka go. Like giving me Anakin's hurt to see Ahsoka go. Anyways, The Wrong Jedi finally answered the question of where was Ahsoka during Revenge of the Sith, and it ended with a bittersweet scene of Ahsoka walking towards the sunset. However, once Clone Wars returned for the 6th season on Netflix, popularly known as Clone Wars: The Lost Missions, Ahsoka briefly appeared in Yoda's visions. Yeah, but that doesn't. I don't really count that because she was more like a vision, part of Yoda's vision. So like, I don't really count that as Ahsoka's return. If you guys count that as one, then go right ahead. But I don't really count that as Ahsoka's return. If that makes sense. And then a couple of years later, Ahsoka would return in Star Wars Rebels, which Ahsoka's like Ahsoka contributed to Rebels in Season 2. I so loved. It was great. Seeing my favorite Clone Wars hero being a badass, that was so great. At the end of Rebels Season 1, a show on which Dave Filoni also worked, the spy Fulcrum was revealed to be Ahsoka. At the same time, Darth Vader arrived on Lothal, thus setting up a confrontation between Ahsoka and her former master Anakin in Rebels Season 2. Ahsoka had a lot of screen time in Rebel Season 2. I feel like she could have had like a bit more. Her and Vader could have had a bit more. I did like, well, before I finish that sentence, I did like how they had James Earl Jones coming back as Vader. That was a nice touch. Ahsoka had a lot of screen time in Rebel Season 2, to the point the finale, Twilight of Apprentice, was more focused on Ahsoka's fight against Vader than the original characters like Sabine, Hera, and Zeb. Ahsoka apparently died after fighting Darth Vader in Twilight of the Apprentice. But Filoni would later reveal in Rebel Season 4 that Ahsoka was alive. And I did enjoy like hearing the debates on whether Ahsoka lived or not. Now, like I said, that episode was good. That was great. And I think that Ahsoka should have died in Twilight of the Apprentice. But, and even if she, did survive, I think the way they kind of brought her back was weird. Because they used time travel. Which is, like, they covered partially, I guess, in the next paragraph. So let me shut up and talk. Like, read. Sorry. Rebels, A World Between Worlds, an episode that introduced time travel in Star Wars, showed that Ahsoka had never died fighting Darth Vader, but instead time traveled into the future for a few minutes. The time travel gimmick allowed Ahsoka to return to her original timeline after that fight against Vader, thus bringing the character back to Star Wars. And I don't know how I exactly feel about that per se, because like on one hand, I'm like happy that we are getting new stories with Ahsoka, and I'm so happy that I'm excited that we're getting stories of like a show that's Ahsoka centric. And Rosario Dawson does an amazing job as Ahsoka. She did an amazing job as Ahsoka in Book of Boba, and before Book of Boba, she did a good job as Ahsoka in Mandalorian Season 2. So, like, even though I'm excited, I'm looking forward to the Ahsoka show, I think Ahsoka's story sort of, like, her end point should have had been in the duel with her and Vader. Just saying. Anyways, that's just me. Ahsoka would later appear in the Rebels epilogue, which set up as a new storyline of Sabine and Ahsoka looking for Ezra and Thrawn. Filoni once again surprised viewers as they misspell Ahsoka. They spell Ahsoka with Ahoksa. Interesting spelling for Ahsoka. But anyways, Filoni once again surprised viewers with Ahsoka appearing in the Mandoverse, this time in live action. More recently, Ahsoka was the focus on 3 Tales of the Jedi episodes. I did enjoy her episodes in Tales of the Jedi. So why Ahsoka is so important to Dave Filoni? Dave Filoni co-created Ahsoka along with George Lucas for the Clone Wars movie, and would later write dozens of Clone Wars episodes featuring the character. Although the idea of Anakin having a Padawan was a significant retcon, Dave Filoni wrote Ahsoka into an essential Star Wars character. Some fans might hate me for this statement, but is it really a retcon that Anakin had a Padawan? Is it though? Because with the movies, with like a new what's that, Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith? Sure, we never seen Anakin have a Padawan, but what, like, there was like the Clone Wars lasted like 5 years, so Revenge of the Sith took place like 5 years after the events of Attack of the Clones. So in that time, we could have easily had like Anakin could have easily had a Padawan, and we never knew before. So like, and sure, you can say like the Clone Wars, like the other Clone Wars cartoon never showed Anakin having a Padawan, and I'll give you guys that. But my argument is, which I'll ask you guys, for those of you who says, "Oh, Anakin having a Padawan is a retcon." Is it though? Sure, it was never mentioned, but was it really a retcon that Anakin had a Padawan? Just saying. If it is, I will admit that I was wrong. But if it's not, I was up front keep saying, I will still keep saying, I will still keep the argument of it wasn't a retcon. So like, until somebody like shows me proof that it's a retcon, I will say that's not a retcon. That's the type of deal. Anyways, therefore it makes sense that sense for Filoni to be protective of Ahsoka and always continue her story in some way. An interesting example of how important Ahsoka is to Dave Filoni was when Star Wars Rise of Skywalker, all the Jedi scene, suggested that Ahsoka was dead, only for Filoni to reveal via Twitter that she could still be alive during the Star Wars sequel trilogy. Which I hope not, because like I said, I don't want, I don't, even though I love the character, and I'm happy that we're still getting, like, new adventures with her, I don't, there's a thing called too much, right? And her being alive, at least towards, Rise of Skywalker, at the very least, would be too much for me. Like, preferably she would be, like, not, like, she would have had her heroic outing by the times, like, at least The Force Awakens the latest. But throughout the events, I think that might be too much Ahsoka. In my opinion. That's just me, and this is coming from a guy who is a huge Ahsoka fan. Saying it, so, yeah. The Ahsoka series can fix Star Wars Ahsoka problem. Okay, what is this? Okay, let's read. From Star Wars Rebels to the Book of Boba, Ahsoka has had some surprising Star Wars appearances, many of which saw Ahsoka stealing the show. That happened in Rebels Season 2, Mandalorian Season 2, and the Book of Boba Episode 6. Fortunately, Ahsoka will now have her own live-action TV show as part of the Mandoverse. Ahsoka will now have her own live-action TV show as part of the Mandoverse. Given the Clone Wars was an anthology series, Ahsoka never really had her own Star Wars show. Therefore, her story will always continue as part of other characters' journey. Now, 15 years later, years after the Clone Wars movie, Dave Filoni has the chance to tell an Ahsoka-centered story in Disney Plus Ahsoka without potentially detracting from the other Star Wars adventures. So I guess the Ahsoka show is like this person's fix to the Ahsoka issue. Now, like I said, I'm a huge Ahsoka fan, and I am happy. There's that side of me that is happy that we're getting Ahsoka more Ahsoka stories. Yes, but at the same time, when is the end for Ahsoka? I mean, we got end for Obi-Wan, and he's just a great character, right? Well, in terms of, like, when he meets his end, which was A New Hope. And, yeah, he was able to continue as a Force ghost, but still. Same with Yoda. Same with Anakin. Now, if you want to say that Ahsoka is a Force ghost, then okay. By the time the sequels comes around, then sure. Like since in Disney's canon, Luke Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano met each other, she could like you can like probably tell some story about how Ahsoka's Force ghost visited Luke on Ahch-To after Yoda, or like right before he like cut himself from the Force. But in terms of being like, I don't know. My point is, I think she should be dead by the time the sequels come around. The Last Jedi, the latest, she should be no more, because Last Jedi, or like shortly after the Last Jedi, because Last Jedi comes like in terms of Star Wars timeline takes up like right after, the Force Awakens. But that's just me. Even though like I said, I do value Ahsoka a lot, her character arc should have, like, in terms of like her meeting her end, should have been in Rebel Season 2 against Vader. I can't stress that enough. But that's just me. That's just me. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section down below. Love you guys. Have a wonderful day. Be kind to one another. And we'll talk to you fellow musicians later. And may the Force be with us all.